Her name was Olivia Parker. The Whitaker family had always believed she wasn't worthy of being part of their world. The irony was that only a few days later, those very people would realize they had completely misjudged the one person capable of changing the fate of their entire family. But at that moment, nobody knew that, not even Olivia herself. That afternoon, the sky over Scottsdale carried a pale gray shade rarely seen during an Arizona winter. Olivia stood inside the special care unit at Hope Haven Animal Rescue Center. The scent of disinfectant mixed with the faint barking of dogs that had recently been rescued from abandoned breeding facilities. She had nearly finished her shift when her phone began to vibrate. Ethan Whitaker's name appeared on the screen. Olivia smiled instinctively, but the smile vanished the moment she heard his voice. Ethan sounded tense. He always sounded that way whenever he was about to deliver news nobody wanted to hear. He cleared his throat. His mother had called. Olivia immediately knew this had something to do with the Whitaker family. After 3 years together, she was more than familiar with that pattern. Ethan slowly explained that his grandmother's 70th birthday celebration would be held that weekend at the family's Lakeside resort. It was the biggest event of the year. Many important guests would be attending. Investors, politicians, well-known business leaders. Olivia listened quietly. Then Ethan finally said what he had really called to say. His mother thought it would be better if Olivia didn't attend. The air in the room seemed to freeze. Olivia stood motionless for several seconds. She looked through the window. Outside, an elderly dog that had recently been rescued from a highway was struggling to learn how to walk on 3 legs. Olivia spoke softly. "Why?" Ethan let out a sigh. He explained that the guests would all be members of the city's elite circles. He said Olivia might feel uncomfortable. He said people would have difficulty finding common topics to discuss with her. He said his mother simply wanted the evening to run smoothly. But both of them knew that wasn't the truth. The truth was that the Whitaker family had never respected what Olivia did. In their eyes, animal rescue was little more than a charitable hobby. Not a career, not a success story. Not something worth admiring. Olivia remembered the first time she met Ethan's mother. She had asked why a smart young woman like Olivia hadn't chosen law or finance instead. On another occasion, Ethan's sister Vanessa openly mocked her work in front of everyone. Vanessa had joked that dogs and cats couldn't pay the bills. The entire dinner table had laughed, everyone except Olivia. And even more painfully, everyone except Ethan. He had remained silent. Just as he always did. Always silent. Olivia tightened her grip on the phone. For 3 years, what hurt her wasn't the insults. What hurt was that the man she loved had never truly stood beside her. Ethan continued trying to explain. He said it was only one party. He said they would still get married afterward. He said there was no reason to turn something small into something bigger. One party. Olivia repeated the words silently in her mind. It had never been just a party. It was a statement, a declaration that she did not belong in their world, and Ethan was willing to accept that. A cold emptiness slowly spread through her chest. It wasn't anger. It wasn't disappointment. It was something far more painful. Clarity. For the first time, Olivia saw the truth she had spent years trying to avoid. This man loved her. But not enough to protect her. He wanted things to be easy. He wanted to keep his family happy. He wanted to avoid conflict. And to achieve that, Olivia was always the one expected to sacrifice. The call ended in silence. She lowered her phone. Just then, a young employee rushed into the room. In his arms was an injured puppy that had just arrived at the shelter. The small animal trembled from the cold. Blood had soaked through the temporary bandage wrapped around its leg. Without hesitation, Olivia dropped everything. Her personal pain disappeared into the background. Her hands immediately got to work. Gentle. Precise. Calm. The puppy gradually relaxed. It looked up at her with eyes full of trust. The young employee standing nearby spoke quietly. "I don't know how you do this every single day." Olivia smiled. "Because nobody else will do it for them." She had no idea that within a matter of days, those words would become the reason one of the most powerful men in the city would completely change the way he saw her. And they would also become the moment the Whitaker family was forced to confront a truth they had spent years looking down on. The truth that a person's value is not measured by the business cards they carry. It is measured by the lives they save when everyone else is afraid to step forward. 3 days after that phone call with Ethan Whitaker, Olivia Parker had almost managed to put the whole thing behind her. At least, she thought she had. Work at the rescue center always kept her busy. It was Saturday evening, the same night as Eleanor Whitaker's 70th birthday celebration, the event where Olivia was not welcome. Outside, powerful winds were beginning to sweep across the outskirts of Scottsdale. Weather reports had warned of an unusual storm system moving through the area, but at the Whitaker family's Lakeside resort, nobody seemed concerned. The crystal chandeliers still sparkled. The music continued to play. Expensive glasses of wine were still being raised amid the laughter and conversations of the city's elite. Meanwhile, Olivia was at the rescue center. She and a few members of the night staff were inspecting the kennel facilities to make sure everything was secure before the storm arrived. Shortly before 9 o'clock that evening, her phone rang. The caller was Jacob Miller, an electrical technician who worked at the Lakeside resort. Olivia recognized him immediately. 2 years earlier, her rescue center had helped Jacob adopt an abandoned dog. His voice was filled with panic. "Olivia, we need help. There's been an accident." In the background, she could hear chaos, people shouting, metal crashing, footsteps running in every direction. Olivia immediately stood up. What happened? Jacob was breathing hard. Part of the outdoor stage just collapsed. Someone is trapped underneath it. An ambulance is on the way, but we need someone who knows first aid. Olivia didn't hesitate for a single second. She grabbed an emergency response kit, threw on her jacket, and rushed to her car. Rain began falling the moment she pulled out of the parking lot. Large drops hammered against the windshield. Lightning tore across the night sky. 20 minutes later, Olivia arrived. The scene before her looked like a miniature disaster zone. Tables and chairs were scattered everywhere. Electrical cables lay across the ground. Groups of guests huddled together inside the main hall. Part of the outdoor stage had been destroyed. The sound of shouting still echoed through the property. Jacob ran toward her. His face was pale. "This way. Hurry!" Olivia followed him through the crowd. Then she saw the man trapped beneath the collapsed steel framework. Blood ran down the side of his head. His breathing was shallow. One of his legs was pinned beneath the wreckage. Terrified faces surrounded him. Nobody knew what to do. Nobody dared touch him. Olivia dropped to her knees immediately. She checked his breathing, checked his pulse, assessed his injuries. Every movement was so fast and precise that the people around her could only stand there and watch in silence. Jacob spoke quietly. "That's Arthur Bennett." Olivia looked up. She knew the name. Arthur Bennett was the founder of Bennett Energy, one of the most influential businessmen in the state of Arizona. But at that moment, none of that mattered. The man in front of her was simply a patient who needed help. Olivia asked everyone to keep their distance. Then she began giving instructions. One person at a time. One specific task at a time. Someone hold a light. Someone find blankets to keep him warm. Someone call the emergency responders again and update them on his condition. Her voice was remarkably calm. That calmness quickly spread to everyone around her. Arthur opened his eyes for a few seconds, then slipped back into unconsciousness. His breathing became weaker. Olivia knew they were running out of time. A powerful gust of wind swept across the scene. Metal screeched overhead. Part of the remaining structure began to shake. Someone shouted, "We need to get out of here." But Olivia didn't move. She stayed exactly where she was, still watching Arthur's breathing, still monitoring every change in his condition. If she walked away now, the man might not survive long enough for the ambulance to arrive. Several minutes later, the sound of sirens finally echoed from the distance. Emergency responders rushed into the scene. A doctor quickly assessed Arthur's condition, then turned toward Olivia. "Who provided first aid?" Jacob pointed at her. The doctor nodded. "If she hadn't kept him stable during the last several minutes, we would be dealing with a much more critical situation right now." Olivia quietly exhaled. For the first time since arriving, she realized her hands were trembling from the adrenaline. Arthur Bennett was loaded into the ambulance. The crowd slowly began to disperse. Nobody noticed that, in the distance, Ethan Whitaker's mother stood frozen in place. She had witnessed everything, and the woman she had once considered unworthy of attending her family's celebration had turned out to be the only person brave enough to step directly into the center of the chaos while everyone else stepped back. But this was only the beginning, because nobody there knew that the man who had just been rushed to the hospital would soon uncover the truth behind everything that had happened that night. A truth powerful enough to change Olivia Parker's life forever, and one that would force the entire Whitaker family to face the consequences of their own arrogance. 3 days after the accident at the Lakeside resort, the entire city was still talking about Arthur Bennett. Television stations continued to provide updates on his condition. Newspapers called it a miracle. Some publications even praised the Whitaker family's quick response on the night of the incident. Olivia only learned about it by chance when she saw a news report playing on a television screen inside a coffee shop near the rescue center. She didn't pay much attention. What caught her off guard was another face that suddenly appeared on the screen: Vanessa Whitaker, Ethan's younger sister. Vanessa was giving an interview. She described the chaos of that night with obvious pride. Then she said something that made Olivia freeze. She implied that she had been one of the people directly involved in helping save Arthur Bennett before emergency responders arrived. Olivia sat quietly. The coffee in her hands slowly grew cold. She wasn't angry. Not exactly. She simply found it amusing. For years, the Whitaker family had been remarkably skilled at turning every situation into an advantage for themselves. But this time, they had chosen the wrong person to take credit from. At that very moment, Arthur Bennett was recovering in a private room at the city hospital. As a businessman who had built an empire from nothing, he had developed a habit over the years. He disliked vague stories, and he always wanted the truth. After reviewing the incident reports and security footage, Arthur quickly realized that the media's version of events wasn't entirely accurate. In the recordings, Vanessa appeared for exactly 30 seconds, then she ran away from the dangerous area. The person who stayed the entire time was Olivia Parker, a woman he had never met before, the woman who kept him conscious, the woman who stopped his bleeding, the woman who coordinated the entire scene while everyone else panicked. 1 week later, Arthur arrived at Hope Haven. He stepped out of a black car, drawing surprised looks from every employee nearby. Olivia was cleaning one of the animal care areas when someone called her outside. She didn't recognize him immediately. But Arthur recognized her. He smiled. "I owe you my life." Olivia paused for a moment. Then everything slowly became clear. Their conversation lasted nearly an hour. Arthur asked about her work. He asked about the rescue center. He asked why she had chosen this life. Olivia gave a simple answer: because abandoned animals deserve a second chance too. Arthur remained silent for a long moment. He looked around the aging facility. He looked at the worn-out kennels. He looked at the animals being cared for with complete dedication by the small team working there. And he understood. For the first time in years, he had met someone who wasn't working for recognition, wasn't working for money, but because she genuinely believed in what she was doing. Near the end of their meeting, Arthur casually mentioned the Whitaker family. He admitted that he had been surprised to learn Olivia was Ethan Whitaker's fiancée. Olivia gave a faint smile. "I was his fiancée." Arthur frowned. Was? It was the first moment he realized there was a much deeper story behind everything that had happened. That same afternoon, Ethan arrived at the rescue center. He looked exhausted. For days, he had been calling Olivia, but she never answered. He stood in the middle of the yard, surrounded by barking dogs and the sound of the wind. He looked at her. He told her he missed her. He said things had gone too far. He said they shouldn't allow a misunderstanding to destroy 3 years together. Olivia quietly looked at the man standing before her, the man she once believed she would spend the rest of her life with. Then she asked a single question: "What if I were a lawyer?" Ethan froze. "What if I were a doctor? Or the chief executive officer of a major company? Would your mother have banned me from attending that party?" Ethan didn't answer. Olivia already knew he wouldn't. She looked directly into his eyes. For the first time in a very long time, there was no pain, no hope, only clarity. The problem had never been the party, and it had never truly been his mother. The problem was that Ethan always chose what was easy. He always chose to make other people happy, and Olivia was always the one expected to step aside. Ethan moved toward her. He tried to take her hand, but Olivia stepped back. He told her he loved her. Olivia believed him, but sometimes love isn't enough. Not enough to build a life together. Not enough to create respect, and certainly not enough to change someone who has never been willing to stand up for what they believe is right. Tears began to fill Ethan's eyes. At that moment, he realized something he had spent years avoiding. He had lost the most extraordinary woman he would ever meet, not because of his mother, not because of his family, but because of himself. Olivia took a deep breath. Then she slipped the engagement ring from her finger. She placed it gently into Ethan's hand. The moment was surprisingly quiet. No shouting. No arguments. No accusations. Yet, it hurt more than any dramatic breakup ever could, because they both understood. This time, it was truly over. As Ethan turned and walked away, he had no idea that even bigger truths were waiting ahead. Truths that would force the entire Whitaker family to face the consequences of their choices. And truths that would lead Olivia Parker into an entirely new chapter of her life. 2 weeks after the breakup, Olivia Parker had almost returned to her normal life, at least on the surface. Every morning, she still arrived at Hope Haven before sunrise. She still checked every kennel. She still worked alongside her staff caring for abandoned animals. From the outside, nothing seemed different. But deep inside, she knew an old chapter of her life had finally ended. And for the first time in years, she no longer felt the need to become the version of herself that other people wanted. Meanwhile, Arthur Bennett had been discharged from the hospital. As soon as he recovered, he began doing something nobody expected. He ordered a complete review of everything that had happened on the night of the accident, not simply because he wanted to thank the woman who had saved him, but because he wanted to understand why someone like Olivia had been treated as if she were insignificant. The more he learned, the more surprised he became. He discovered that Olivia had spent nearly 10 years rescuing animals. He learned that she had turned down multiple higher-paying career opportunities. He learned that she often used her own savings to keep the rescue center operating, and most importantly, he realized that people like Olivia were the quiet foundation that helped communities function and thrive. 1 month later, Arthur Bennett held a press conference. Reporters filled the room. Several of the city's most influential business leaders were also in attendance. During his speech, Arthur spoke about the night of the accident. He described the woman who ran toward danger while everyone else was trying to escape. He spoke about her calmness, her dedication, and the courage he had witnessed with his own eyes. Then he announced a decision that stunned everyone in the room. The Bennett Foundation would contribute $5 million to expand animal rescue services throughout the state of Arizona. The project would be called the Parker Animal Rescue Initiative. The entire room fell silent for several seconds, then applause erupted. Seated among the audience, Olivia was completely speechless. She had never asked for any of it. She had never even imagined it. Arthur looked in her direction. Then he smiled. Sometimes the people who change other lives deserve to have their own lives changed too. But that wasn't the only thing that happened. At the same time, the Whitaker family began facing consequences they never expected. Business partners throughout the city learned the full story. They learned that the woman excluded from the celebration had been the person who saved Arthur Bennett's life. They learned that the Whitakers had dismissed her because of her profession and social status. The family's reputation began to suffer, especially Vanessa's. The same Vanessa who had tried to claim credit during her television interviews. When the security footage from the accident scene became public, everything changed overnight. The praise disappeared. The questions began. And for the first time in her life, Vanessa was forced to confront a simple truth. A reputation cannot be built on someone else's accomplishments. Not long afterward, Eleanor Whitaker asked to meet Olivia. The meeting took place in a small tea shop. There were no bodyguards, no reporters. None of the glamour usually associated with the Whitaker family, just two women sitting across from one another. After several moments of silence, Eleanor finally spoke. "I was wrong about you." Olivia said nothing. Eleanor continued. "I spent too many years judging people by their status. I believed success was measured by what appeared on a business card, but you've shown me how wrong I was." For the first time, Olivia saw genuine sincerity in the older woman's eyes. Eleanor apologized. Not because of Arthur Bennett, not because of public opinion, but because she finally understood, and that understanding gave the apology real meaning. Several days later, Ethan sent Olivia a text message. It was the shortest message he had ever sent her. It simply said, "You were right. I've spent my entire life trying to make everyone else happy, and in the end, I lost the person who mattered most." Olivia read the message. Then she smiled. Not because she had won, not because she felt vindicated, but because she knew she had finally let go of the past. A year passed. Hope Haven was transformed. The old buildings had been renovated. New care facilities had been constructed. Thousands of animals had been rescued. Hundreds of families had found new companions. And every time Olivia walked past the sign bearing the name Parker Animal Rescue Initiative, she still found it hard to believe. One spring afternoon, she stood in the center of the property. She watched dogs running beneath the warm sunlight. She listened to the laughter of families arriving to adopt their new pets. And in that moment, she finally understood the most important lesson of all. A person's value is not determined by which parties they are invited to attend. It is not determined by the car they drive. It is not determined by status or reputation. It is determined by the lives they make better. The Whitaker family once believed Olivia wasn't important enough to be part of their world. But in the end, Olivia created a better world for countless others, and that was something no luxury event could ever compete with. If you were Olivia, would you forgive Ethan after everything that happened? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow for more emotional stories about self-worth, personal growth, and the truths that can change an entire life.